have gathered here together should not work. Our little experiment in religious freedom probably should have failed a long time ago. Because almost every faith tradition out there has some central belief or tenet or text that holds the center together, binds its people together. Almost every faith has some sort of creed. And there are some out there who would argue that a creed is absolutely necessary for a community of faith to be able to hang together. In the Hebrew Scriptures, the prophet Amos asks the question, can two people walk together if they are not in agreement with one another? And by that measure, we should be doomed. If we're going to get together and talk about belief in this room, agreement is about the farthest possibility there could be out there. But here we are, Sunday after Sunday. How do we walk together then if we are not in agreement? And the rather simple but amazing answer to that question is we just do it. Because our tradition is all about the walking together, not the believing. In this room, what we do matters more than what we believe. And the how it is that we are doing this together, the how it is that we are walking together, matters far more than any of the reasons why. And the how of it, this method we have of just walking together, that is because of covenant. Unitarian Universalism grows out of a long line of religious traditions that have relied upon covenant for their survival. We are the descendants of those same Puritans who helped put together the Mayflower Compact with its very simple covenant that we will just stick together for our own sake and take care of each other. Not a lot of rules around that, but just one simple acknowledgement after months of hard travel and descent that we needed one another to survive, and so we were going to hang together no matter what. And that idea grew into the covenant of the first congregation that was planted on those Plymouth shores, the congregation that is now the first Unitarian church in Plymouth, Massachusetts, whose original members got together and said to one another, we pledge to walk together in the ways of God, in the ways of love, known to us now, or yet to be made known to us. So strong was their belief in that promise to one another that they carved it in the walls of the church, and it's still sitting there in the sanctuary today. Now later on, those congregational churches that we grew out of, they would make more rules about exactly how to do that walking together, and we still govern ourselves with many of those rules that we've had for hundreds of years. But all of those covenants, the Mayflower Compact, the covenant of that Pilgrim Church in Plymouth, the platform of governance that the church in Cambridge came up with, all of these are based around the same basic premise. There are many windows, but one light. And because of that, we need one another for our survival. Whether or not the waters we are traveling over together are choppy or they are calm, we have to stay together. To celebrate the places where we connect with one another, to do the hard work of finding connections with one another when it seems as though our differences will keep us divided forever. We need to stay together and invite each other constantly back into this journey, back into this promise. So we don't have a creed to hang our hats on, but we have a covenant. We are a covenantal faith. This, believe it or not, is a covenantal community. We make promises to one another about how we will be together, about how we will walk together. Many of you probably didn't realize you had made these promises to one another. You're not going to see them written out anywhere. It's not an article in our congregation's constitution. It's not printed in your order of service anywhere. It's certainly not carved on the wall here over my head. But we make promises to one another about how we will be together nonetheless. It is implicit in all of those things that we claim we value the most as a church community. It's a promise that is implicit there in our principles. That we affirm the worth and dignity of all people. That we celebrate the interdependent web of all existence. It's a promise that's there in our affirmation that we say together week after week. That love is our doctrine. That service is our prayer. That we seek to dwell together in peace. It's a promise implicit in our own mission and vision. That we celebrate our diversity, that we seek unity together, that we keep our hearts, our minds, our doors open. These aren't just comforting words that we repeat week after week, because it's just something we do. This is our guide for how we will be together. These are our instructions for walking. And we come together here in this room week after week to renew those promises we make to one another and to discover new ways of how to live in that promise together. This is our school for learning how to walk together. Now, those lessons start here. But this covenant we have does not dissolve at the door. Because another one of the promises we have made to ourselves in that mission and that vision is that we're not a bunker, but a beacon. That's who we want to be. And so once we learn how to walk together, once we figure out that incredibly difficult task, it is imperative that we walk out the door. We show others how to do it. Because the revolutionary purpose of a covenantal place like this is to show the world a new way, a different way of walking together. Because our need for others, that need to stick together, doesn't end outside the walls. It applies no matter where we go. And we need to remember how to walk together now more than ever. Because let's face it, friends, this last decade has been hell on covenant. Not just the promises we make in this room, but the promises we make to one another as citizens of a nation. Fear and division have ruled our hearts. The waters have been very troubled. And I think we're in danger sometimes of drifting far too far apart. As a whole, I think our human response to the events of September 11th, 2001 have not been in keeping with our promises to one another as a nation. We'll hear a lot of talk this weekend about memorials, about the proper way to remember those who lost their lives on that day, what kind of building to build, what kind of statue to make, what kind of light to flash in the air. And I think that that's the wrong direction for the conversation. On July 22nd of this year in Norway, another act of terror took place, the bombing of a government building and the killing of nearly 76 youth attending a government-sponsored camp. Given our own history with such acts of violence, we probably couldn't blame the people of Norway if they responded with fear and paranoia and division. And yet, the response of the Prime Minister of that country points us in a completely different direction. Norway was one country before this, he said, and it will be one country afterwards. And the only response to an act like this is more democracy, more freedom, more openness. In other words, more of the promises that we make to one another as citizens of a country. Covenant, and covenant, and covenant. This is the only response that matters when the covenant is threatened. We promise to walk together. It's a simple covenant and centuries old, and it still feeds us today. No matter how troubled the waters get, we walk together until we have journeyed to a place of wholeness. All of us, no exceptions. From this day on, the only memorial that will matter, for better or for worse, is how we live together here in this church, in Los Alamos, in our country, in the world. Amos asks us, can two people walk together if they are not in agreement together? And I say the answer is yes. Because the walking is all. As long as it is walking together. And so this year I welcome you back into the covenant you didn't even know you had. May you live it out loud for the whole world to witness. May we always walk together in the ways of the Spirit of life and love, known to us now, yet to be made known to us. May it be so.